everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. Given it's officially October, I want to spend at least some of the videos of this month on horror and horror-adjacent topics. Starting with, as the title I think already gave it away, Scooby Doo. As a franchise that has been around for over 50 years by now, there have been a lot of iterations of Scooby Doo, and with each new iteration there has been some change to the formula, so to speak. And one of the changes that I think is most attention-grabbing, or at least is most attention-grabbing to me, is whether or not the supernatural is confirmed as being real in universe. I thought, and going through the franchise's history, I had two thoughts occurring to me. Number one, how come no one questions the appearance of overly advanced sci-fi tech in this world? Second, and more directly relevant to the video at hand, do any of the appearances or iterations of this franchise that show the supernatural as being real have anything in common? And if so, what is that thing, and what does it mean for for the franchise as a whole? Before I can answer that, we'll have to take a look at what makes Scooby Doo unique, as in what characterizes it. Some of you might be aware that it was initially pitched as a cartoon series called Who's Scared, and it was about a group of teens who would go from town to town solving mysteries and getting spooked by various monsters. The initial pitch was deemed to be too scary for its child audience, and so they toned the horror down a bit somewhat, and also made the dog of this group of teens. They brought the dog more into focus, so to speak. Some sources say they made him the main character, but really Scooby Doo isn't really the main character of the cartoon. It really is very much an ensemble piece. That being said, the main formula, the main plot beats of a general Scooby Doo episode are still basically the same. The gang arrives at some town or location that is haunted by some kind of monster or ghost. They notice something strange about the locations of the sightings, and go on an investigation to find out why that strange things happen. Hijinks ensue while they are chased by the monster and putting the clues together. They then set up a trap that somehow fails in its execution, but still succeeds in capturing the monster, who is then unmasked and revealed to be some guy or some person who wants to scare people away from the location because reasons. If you are to look at it from a plot progression standpoint, Scooby Doo is a horror mystery, only with the horror somewhat de-emphasized and the mystery aspects emphasized somewhat more. Occasionally, the horror is actually replaced with humor. What does that mean for the storytelling? Well, from a thematic standpoint, it places the horror in opposition to the mystery. Therefore, it places logic and reasoning in opposition to fear. It is basically telling its audience, particularly its child audience, that they should not allow their convictions to be guided by fear. They should allow their convictions to be guided by what their mind allows them to discover, and then use that discovery to confront their fear. Many overzealous Christians have called it atheist propaganda, but I will say their labeling of it is fear-mongering propaganda. So, with that opposition set in place, what does it mean when the mystery breaks down? When the apparently supernatural aspects of the story are revealed to genuinely be supernatural? So, some of you might be surprised, but the incursion of the supernatural within Scooby Doo actually, you could say it didn't really start with Zombie Island, even though that had the tagline that this time the zombies are real. It arguably started in the late 70s, but it really only came to its in full or at its height during the early to mid 80s, aka during the Reagan administration. And the message that I will say Scooby Doo as a franchise delivered towards approaching the supernatural in that case was always to just accept it as it is, just kind of go with the flow approach. This was somewhat helped by the fact that most supernatural appearances that the gang, regardless of size, would encounter were often either benign or harmless. Even the more actively malicious supernatural elements were not exactly cartoonish, but they could still be, well, okay, they were cartoonish because cartoons, but they weren't overtly cartoonish when compared to the rest of the setting. And also they could almost always be defeated, partly through the main character's own ingenuity, partly through the assistance of benign supernatural presences. It is very much this therefore becomes very much an invitation to accept the supernatural, to respond to the world as it responds to you. If the first iteration of Scooby Doo was atheist propaganda, this new iteration is very much deist propaganda. There are things out there that you can't figure out, can't uncover. So you might as well just go with the flow. Whether or not that results in more religiosity among the followers is pretty hard to say. But one element that did in fact one major change that did bring to the conceptual makeup of Scooby Doo is that the courage that was to some extent endemic in the initial concept was shifted from just the courage to find answers to the courage to solve whatever problem is at hand. Shifting the focus of the franchise from solving a puzzle to achieving catharsis, so to speak, to giving the audience or the characters a sensation that they are able to overcome things not just on an intellectual level but also on a physical level to some extent. While that is an interesting shift, I would argue it ultimately leads to to a dilution of what made Scooby Doo unique and what made it interesting in the first place. And because of that, you kind of constantly see the return of the approach towards mysteries that the initial cartoon accepted and embraced and made its own. Interestingly enough, I did mention religion a lot so far when discussing the supernatural within this franchise. The level of religiosity the level of religiosity present within general society doesn't really impact anything about the way the franchise presents itself. It really comes across, if anything, more like the creator of a particular iteration of the franchise wants to set their iteration apart from the previous one. Think about how What's New Scooby Doo is different from Zombie Island in the first three, and the other three in the first four direct-to-DVD movies, or how Zombie Island directly contrasts a pup named Scooby Doo, or how a pup named Scooby Doo directly contrasts the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, etc., etc. So yeah, that back and forth kind of characterized a lot about the franchise after the mid to late 80s. In the past 10 years, though, I've noticed something else, namely that that the duality of this franchise, this duopoly, more or less, has kind of started to break down, and these two basic concepts for the franchise have started to blend together. Think Mystery Incorporated. Think Scooby Natural. Maybe even the Courage the Cowardly Dog crossover. It's the franchise kind of embracing itself and approaching itself in a different way, breaking down what came before it, and trying to figure out what made those iterations work, and how they can be brought together. Kind of in a way, it is telling you two things that to some extent contrast each other. Namely that even though there are only so many things you can learn through exposure and trust. There will always be mysteries out there left to explore. However, simultaneously, while it is good and it is very much needed for you to use your mind when it comes to unlocking and realizing what it is you've gotten yourself into, there will always be some mysteries that cannot be answered. How exactly the franchise will deal with the conceptual questions that arise from that is pretty hard to say, but it is something I low-key look forward to, at least for the next 10, 20 years, or however long the franchise is gonna keep going. And yeah, that was it for this video. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have anything you'd like to add to this topic, the comment section awaits your input. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like it. And if you want to see when my next video, where I'll be talking about the Addams Family, comes out, then please subscribe. Ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.